What problems are you dealing with in your life right now?
Do you feel like giving up? Times are hard and you're not strong. Well, I know the answer for you, and it will lead to real truth. Don't look back to yesterday.
Now there are answers.
Tomorrow's on the
Welcome to
way.
Live Prayer.
It's waiting there for you.
Here's your host, Bill Keller.
And welcome to Live Prayer. I am Bill Keller. It's good to be with you on this Wednesday evening. Pray it was a great day for you. Good to be back with you. If you're new to the program, you're watching Live Prayer. We come to you live and in living color every Monday through Friday, 11 to midnight Eastern Daylight Time. And wherever you may be across this great land of ours, sea to shining sea, border to what was used to be a border at least for about a year and a half. Thank you for tuning in. And for our friends in other far-off great lands, thank you for watching as well. I'm Bill Keller, founder of LivePrayer.com. We're the world's largest interactive Christian website, reach a little over 2.5 million folks every day via the internet. I'd encourage you to check us out online. Web address coming up on your screen, LivePrayer.com. Don't be shocked. I've got nothing to sell you when you get there. There's no advertising. Just 22 years of Frontlines ministry content, all produced here at Live Prayer, to be a blessing to you and your family, all for free. Check it out. Well, it's good to be back with you. I actually have kind of been counting down the hours for the program tonight. I'll just be honest with you, I feel very vindicated today. It's been amazing this last year. So, I get emails all the time, people asking me about, how do I put these events in some kind of context? And most often I'm right about the direction that I share, and a lot of people are appreciative of that. So much of what we talk about on this program you may not hear for days, weeks, months, years in this case from the regular media. But see, here's the thing. I don't have a corporate master to bow to. Nobody edits what I say other than God. I'm here to deliver truth. I don't have advertisers I have to worry about when I tell the truth that most people don't want to hear. And again, after 30 years of evangelism, ultimately, even though we talk about the issues of the day, it's always in the context of our faith. And it's always to help us better understand this world that we're living in. And ultimately from a biblical worldview. So let's pray, because I guess we got to start with Fauci. If I'm not mistaken, and the beautiful thing about having all these programs on demand to go back and watch, I said last night that I just sensed in my gut that Fauci was not going to be long for this world in terms of his job with the government. And boy, I woke up this morning with alerts all over my computer and phones, and had no, of course, I don't have any advanced information. Listen, the one thing I do have, one of the great, I guess, benefits for me and the 30 years I've been in ministry, 22 online, 18 on TV, but especially with the audience we have online, 2.5 million people every day, I've got access to a lot of really intelligent people, people that specialize in everything you can name. And so I spend time every day on the phone talking to some of these experts when it's something that involves what their expertise is in. So that's been a great advantage for me, especially as I try to assess things, because life changes so fast. And I've always said one of the biggest problems with the church, it's the proverbial, they wait for the proverbial horse to be out of the barn before they even really get serious. I mean, one of the greatest examples of that is gay marriage. I mean, we came online August of 99, right? And they were just starting that big push. And people just didn't pay much attention. I kept trying to warn them, it's coming, you don't understand. And then once it hit, I get emails from saying, I can't imagine how this happened, Bill. Well, it happened for all the reasons I was sharing for the previous 12 years prior to that. Pastors won't talk about it. The church actually goes soft on it. Oh, got something about that tonight too. And like I said, Satan's people, they never slumber or sleep. They're on the job 24/7. We sleep too much, we take vacations, we don't pay attention. And meanwhile, Satan is relentless, never stops. Now, we know what happens at the end. We know what happens. He knows what happens at the end because he's read the Bible. And his whole goal every day is to take as many souls to the pits of hell with him when that day comes. But let's have a word of prayer. Let's get started because we've got not just the Fauci and the Chinese flu situation, but have a few other things tonight that are very important I want to get to. So let's pray. Father, thank you for tonight. Thank you for bringing us all together once again. We never take for granted even one of these programs. I lift up my dear friends who are in this audience tonight, pray for them and their families and the needs they represent tonight. And Lord, today we are grateful for a day that wasn't promised to us, but was a gift from you. And we thank you for your blessings. And now, O Lord, just open our hearts and minds so we can truly hear and receive all you have for us tonight. And we thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, again, if you have had the benefit of being part of this audience since early last year, I think I made the first mention of the Chinese flu in the first couple days of February. I have to go back and check. And then again, if you were with us fairly regularly throughout all last year and so far this year, none of the things that happened today should have been a surprise. These are all things that I've been talking about for over a year. Number one, I've always questioned Fauci. And I'll tell you why. It's not genius work. He's a government bureaucrat. He's been in the government for 40 years. You know, if there is such a thing as a deep state, which that's just, really that's all that is, that's just another name for the administrative state. The administrative state are people that are in government agencies for 20, 30, 40 years. They're the ones that actually run the show. Unbeknownst to most people, it's a bunch of government bureaucrats. Yeah, the president tries to set the agenda, but as we saw for 4 years with Trump, if they don't like his agenda, they try to sabotage it. And even when they do like the agenda, they still, at the end of the day, are doing what they've always done. Okay, Fauci's been in the government 40 years. He's as deep state gets. And that means he's a politician because you don't stay in the government for 40 years without being a politician. Of course, he never had to run for office, but he has to be political as he interacts with all these agencies, including the White House and the Congress for budgets and things like that, right? But I told you early last year that I thought Fauci I questioned him. Well, and part of it was he just kept, meandering around these various issues, would never take a big stand. And when he did, he reversed it a few days later. But as a lot I'm going to tell you in these first 5-10 minutes here. Again, if you've been watching the program, you know this. The globalists use this pandemic for their advantage. All right? I've told you all along from almost day one that I totally believed this came out of a lab, not some wet market. And one of the reasons for that is if you read some of that type of literature, in previous outbreaks, they were always able to find a host animal very quickly that it naturally came from. There was no such thing here. Not to mention the labs in Wuhan. That's where all of the Chinese military biotech weaponry is experimented with and put it together. So it wasn't that hard to figure out that this thing almost guaranteedly came from the lab. The only question is, did it get out by accident or was it on purpose? And I'll be blunt with you. As you know, again, if you've watched, I've always said, it's 50-50. And we'll never know at the end of the day. It's almost guaranteed we'll never know the answer at the end of the day. But as last year unfolded, as this year's unfolded, as these events have unfolded, I got to be honest with you, I'm 10% accident, 90% on purpose. And I'll tell you exactly why in just a minute. But here's the most important thing to know about Dr. Fauci, as I call him Mini Doc. He knew immediately what had happened. And as you may probably know, they released 3,000 pages of his emails today through a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request. Now, some of those emails are redacted, and I got a feeling Congress is going to be pushing for a lot of that redacted stuff to be unredacted. But just what we were able to read, Fauci knew, number one, it came from a lab. Fauci knew, number two, it was all part of his gain of function research that he used taxpayer dollars to help fund. He knew that back in January. And that's the thing that disgusts me about him more than anything. This didn't have to be this bad if he'd just come clean. We would have been able to look at this whole thing in those early days much differently. But you see, like most globalists, like all globalists really, Fauci's in bed with the Chinese. Actually, for the record, it was the Biden administration that shut down some of the gain of function experiments. If you're not familiar with that term, it's basically just taking like a virus and supercharge it, turn it into a super virus to see how powerful they can make it, how contagious they can make it. And people say, well, why would they want to do that? Well, in case there was such a bioweapon, then they try to figure out how to stop it. Okay? And as I shared with you last night, in 2012, we found out that Fauci, on the record, in an interview, said pursuing these gain of function experiments is worth risking a worldwide pandemic. So he knew what was going on. Back to what I was saying before, but under the Obama administration, they shut down all of that type of experimentation here in this country. So they moved it over to Wuhan, funneled $3 million or so of taxpayer money through a third party to get to the lab in Wuhan to do these experiments. The point being, he knew on the 31st of January, based on the emails that were released, he knew this it came from the lab, and he knew darn well the money that he had authorized that ended up in that lab to do these experiments. I don't know. Listen, we'll never know now. But based on what we do know, this man should not just be fired, probably be in jail. And that's not an overstatement either. Because what Fauci ended up doing was covering for the Chinese. He covered for them. And of course he had to cover for them because he was the one that funded these things. I heard some people today say he's the father of the Chinese flu. I agree, he is. He's the godfather of the pandemic. Knowing what he knew back at the last day of January 2020, if he would have come clean, I can't help but to believe based on that, because don't forget, all the science people, they were spending month after month after month trying to figure all this out, when Fauci knew all along what it was. He also, in these emails, something that I question almost from day one is the effectiveness of these masks. I mean, it's pretty well understood now the masks are absolutely worthless. Probably the most disgusting thing in all this is the millions and millions of lives. Well, first of all, the dead. Now, let me reinforce something. Something else we've known, and I've been basically putting out there for a year. 99% of the people that died, that they listed as a COVID-19 Chinese flu, 99% had other medical conditions. They just didn't catch the Chinese flu and die. Now we know 98% were over 65, and we know 99% had some sort of a pre-existing medical history. But again, by covering for the Chinese back at the early stages, who knows how many hundreds of thousands of people in this country and around the world died that maybe didn't have to. How many millions of lives have been rocked and destroyed, not just here, but around the world? The suicides, the drug addiction, the alcoholism, the damage to these kids that we may never know that the totality of that. The crime. All of the issues that have been attributed to these tyrannical lockdowns in this country and around the world didn't have to happen. Didn't have to happen. Don't forget, early on, I shared with you back in 19, for those of you who are a little older than me, I'm 63. In 1956, we had a Chinese flu pandemic. And another one in late 68, early 69. As I shared with you almost at the beginning when I was researching those, nothing locked down. Schools were open. Some schools maybe got hit, had to close for a few days, but schools were open. People weren't running around with masks. The sick stayed home. People lived their lives. Sports went on. I mean, life went on. And we just trusted our medical healthcare infrastructure to do their best for the sick as everybody else kept living their lives. And that's how we approached it. And back in 56 and in 68, 69, it was the exact same thing. The people that ultimately died were almost 100% over 65 and virtually 100% with pre-existing medical issues, just like this time. The lockdowns that destroyed and damaged and cost the worldwide economy trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars never had to happen. And you still got people locked down in England and some other places. You still got Whitmer's talking about keeping people locked down in Michigan. By the way, don't take my word that the lockdowns were meaningless. Just look at the facts. Look at what happened in Florida. Look what happened in Texas. Then look what happened in California and New York and New Jersey. They had a worse time of it than we did. Governor DeSantis here in Florida, sick, stay home. Let's do our best to take care of the elderly. Trust our healthcare infrastructure to handle, people and everybody else. Live your life. Masks were worthless. The lockdowns never had to happen. It was all a lie. And here's another sick thing. The disgusting globalist corporate media actually corporate propagandists that masquerade as the media, they fueled this fire. How many nights did I sit on this program telling you to quit listening to the media as they push this fear porn, cases, making it seem like everybody's going to die? Yeah, it reminds me of Florida. You know, Florida is susceptible to hurricanes about 4 months of the year. Every time one looks like it's coming. And listen, I am not diminishing the advanced warnings and people should be prepared and everything. But having lived down here for 28 years now, 29, yeah, we've had a few come in. Yep, some of them have been fun, but they are what they are. But for the most part, they scare these old people to death. Can't find a bottle of water anywhere. Can't find any lumber anywhere. I mean, they just put these people in panic. That's exactly what the sick media did in this country. They drove this lie for a year and a half. Don't forget, I was, you know, a lot of different radio hits and things like that last year. You know, I was being called a fearmonger, a danger to the public health, conspiracy theorist. And once again, though, the globalist corporate media was in bed with China and still are. Even today, after everything that's out, I haven't been able to see a lot of it, but I've got a bunch of stuff DVR'd after the show. I'm going to eat a little dinner and watch some of the corporate propagandists. But from the little bit I've seen, from the little bit I've heard today, they're not apologetic, obviously, and they aren't even really covering it. It's well, next. It was like when it was finally publicly proven that Donald Trump had nothing to do with Russia. Matter of fact, the only person that had anything to do with Russia was Hillary Clinton. And after 3.5 years of pounding that Russia, day after day, when it was finally exposed to be a lie, the media just went on to something else, didn't apologize, didn't even cover it. And that's what they're going to do with this. And it wasn't just big tech, don't forget. Or big, it wasn't just the corporate media. It was big tech that was involved too. They were censoring people. If you even dared to pontificate and try to make a case that this could have come from a lab, you got blacklisted. You got your accounts shut down. And now it turns out from these emails, Fauci was having a little buddy thing with Zuckerberg of Facebook, and Zuckerberg had a whole division set up that all of Fauci's ramblings and his lies were pushed out to the Facebook world, and if you disagree with Fauci, they just shut you down. Again, you've got to understand the big picture of this. And that's why after all of this time, after everything we now know, after we've got proven facts that are indisputable, that's why I'm no longer at a 50-50 place as far as whether it was leaked accidentally or on purpose. And again, let me tell you why. One of the things, if you watch a program, I say often, there's no accidents, there are no coincidences in this world, and certainly not when big events. I think a global pandemic probably qualifies for a big event, don't you? Well, don't forget when all this happened. President Donald Trump had brought this country the greatest economic surge we've ever had. Unemployment all across the board was at record lows. He was bringing some peace deals to the Middle East. First president in decades that didn't get us into a new war. I mean, he was going to waltz into a re-election without even breaking a sweat. Well, we know the media was going to do everything in its power to make sure it didn't happen. We know big tech was all on board. Again, all the globalists. And we're going to talk about Israel a little bit, about what's going on over there. I told you this before. The globalists, there's two precious stones that the globalists want to destroy. One is called Israel. One's called the United States. And in both cases, it's because of faith. The God of the globalists is the state. They have to stamp out and eliminate people of faith. That's why. So you've got the globalists early in 2020. Okay, we got this pandemic. It's out there. So the media was going to use it as a cudgel against Trump. Matter of fact, some of them were, again, so blatant that they didn't even try to hide it. Oh, the best thing ever happened. Get rid of this guy. You have big tech on board censoring any pro-Trump stuff. Absolutely blacked out all the proof of Hunter Biden's grifting and Joe Biden's selling of his office. So you had the media, big tech working hand in hand. You had the big bankers, the investment bankers on board. The global corporations were all on board, because these people all want the same thing. They want the downfall of Israel. They want the downfall of the United. Why? Because they want to have total control. Look what happened in New York. You couldn't even go outside without, getting arrested if you went out the wrong time of day. If you didn't have your mask on. I mean, this is tyranny, but this is what they want. This is what they want. So, and don't forget another thing too. China had an extra incentive to want Donald Trump gone. Donald Trump was the first United States president since China had become a player on the world stage. Don't forget, it kind of all started with Nixon. Remember with Nixon and the ping pong diplomacy, and that kind of started opening the doors. It still was years later. But really, since Clinton, the 8 years of Clinton, the 8 years of Bush, the 8 years of Obama, you're talking 24, 25 years. And Donald Trump was the first president to challenge China, to put on these tariffs to try to balance out the trade imbalance that we've had with them, over $500 million or $500 billion every year of a trade imbalance. He put sanctions on them to try to balance that out a little bit. He was the first one who held their feet to the fire on a lot of things, and they resented it. So don't think for a second they didn't have their own ulterior. And don't forget anything else. China owns Avatar Joe Biden and his boy Hunter. They are owned by the Chinese. So they had every incentive to do whatever they could do to make sure that Donald Trump was not elected president and Joe Biden was. But going back to the big picture, Dr. Fauci, mini Doc Fauci, has turned out to be an absolute liar. He lied to Congress, by the way. We know that for a fact. He was put under the thumb by Senator Rand Paul, and who else had him? John Kennedy from Louisiana with his little folksy stuff, right? He flat out lied to Congress. Under oath, too. They're under oath. That's 5 years. If you're anybody but maybe a guy named Fauci, he needs to be fired immediately. He should be put in jail, because this country and countries around the world were devastated for the last year and a half. And as we know now, Fauci, if he wanted to be a real hero, he could have come clean almost from day one. And again, how would things have played out different? I don't know, but I got to tell you something. I don't think things could have been any worse than they were, especially knowing what we know now. Masks are just a waste of time. The lockdown was, and again, if you were with me last year, when they started talking about lockdowns, I remember telling you on this show, that the pain and the fallout from the lockdowns are going to end up being 10 times worse than the people that actually had the Chinese flu. Another player in those emails too, which is not a surprise, is Bill Gates. Why is Bill Gates? Bill Gates is the globalist. He's the one that wants to depopulate the earth by aborting babies and euthanizing old people. And Bill Gates has made incredible amounts of money partnering with Big Pharma on what? Vaccines. And if you remember when this whole vaccination thing started, I told you don't ever discount the fact that there's huge money in these vaccines. Huge money. Because you're talking about 7 billion people on the earth that need to be jabbed. And they're going to want people to start taking boosters this fall. I got to tell you something. And I always try to make sure people don't take my words and twist them. I can't tell you what to do about the vaccine. I have counseled people on this program to pray, seek the Lord, maybe seek some counsel from your pastor, definitely sit down with your doctor. If you're not over 65 and you don't have any of those big pre-existing things like asthma, cancer, obesity, things like that, it's probably not a decision you have to rush into. But I got to tell you something. After all of the deception that I've watched for the last year and a half, I think it calls all these things into question. So that's just a personal opinion. But oh, by the way, if you don't fully believe me that the globalists want to take this country out because of people of faith, when they were first looking to start locking things down, the first thing they decided had to go was what? Church services. Church services. There's a couple emails debating, what things that, they should kind of prohibit people from being involved in. Church service is number one. While we're talking about the church, big Catholic boy Joe Biden, Avatar Joe. He said religious people, if you don't know, June is Pride Month, okay? That's the month they set aside every year to celebrate sexual deviancy in this country. By the way, speaking of that, under Obama, all of our consulates around the world flew the American flag, and during June, during Pride Month, flew the rainbow flag of the sexual deviants. Well, that didn't happen for the 4 years under Donald Trump, but it's back. Now that Biden's in, the rainbow flag to celebrate sexual deviancy is flying at all of our consulates, even our embassy next to the Vatican. But Joe Biden says religious people must harmonize with LGBTQ XYZ activists. Harmonize. Well, I know he hasn't read the Bible. What fellowship does light have with darkness? That comes to mind right away. You don't harmonize with sin. You don't harmonize with those living in utter rebellion to God. You pray for them. You try to get them saved. You don't harmonize with them. One of the things I counsel parents, and sadly over the last 22 years we've been online, had to dole out this advice over and over and over again, sadly. But parents come to me and, hey, my son says he's gay. My daughter says she's a lesbian. And I share with them, hey, love them, keep communication lines open, that's key. But I said, at no time do you in any way condone their choice. That's where you got to draw the line. They made a choice. It's not a choice you can condone. Biden says religious people just need to harmonize with LGBTQ XYZ activists. You don't harmonize with sin. I got to tell you something. The people running the professional sports leagues, I mean, they're just stone cold idiots. It all started back in the NFL with Kaepernick taking the knee, right? And huge fallout for that. Huge fallout. After a few years, some of the fans started coming back. They started to pick back up again. Then you have the pandemic. Then you got the first sport back was the NBA. And they had to paint Black Lives Matter on the court. And all the players were wearing the names on their jersey of career criminals that if they had not resisted arrest, they would not have been killed that day. Glorifying criminals. And I got to tell you something. I don't know if the NBA is ever going to recover. People have they just have nothing to do with it anymore. But again, it's Pride Month, so you got all the pro sports teams now going to be wearing the little rainbow flag of the sexual deviants. I think it started tonight with the New York Giants or the San Francisco Giants baseball team wearing their little pride flags. I'm waiting for the guy that won't do it. That's what I'm waiting for. That's going to be a tough stand. Oh, they will rip him up one side, rip him down the other. But somebody's going to do it. I have confidence somebody's going to do it. We've got this terrible rash of cops being ambushed. It happened under Obama after years of demonizing the police. He just made it open season on police. 4 years of Trump, gave the police all the props that they deserve. Glorified the police. All of them perfect? No. And the ones that cross the line, you put them in the criminal justice system. But now we got Biden, and we're back to demonizing the police, and we've got a rash of these ambushes where the cops are being called to, somebody's outside my door. I mean, these are just fake emergencies to get the cops out somewhere so they can get shot. It's happening a lot now. But you know what? We live in a society that for 48 years has been living under a black cloud of death. Entertainment, video games, music, all have a horrible, horrible problem of glorifying death. Even though it's fiction, it's still, and without going to church, any kind of faith values, life is just meaningless. Life is meaningless. I mean, so many of these people are living their lives like feral animals. I mean, you've seen the attacks on the street, just walking up to people, old ladies punching them, driving down the street, shooting randomly into people's houses. It's disgusting. It really is. By the way, going back to the vax just for a second, I don't know if you've been following along. Who is it? Budweiser, I think, is giving away a beer. You get a vax, they'll give you a free beer. Krispy Kreme, I think, is giving you a donut. West Virginia is giving away some kind of gun if you get vaccinated. You got states giving out these $1 million lottery prizes for people who get vaccinated. Here's just something I want to throw out there, just something for you to mull over and use your own common sense. Why are they having to bribe people with sports tickets and tennis shoes and beer and donuts to get this thing? What's that? Just throwing it out there. One thing that's been a little interesting, the violence by Antifa in Portland has gotten so bad that you actually even have some, not much, but some of the corporate propagandists that act like the media talking about it now. They've ignored it for the last year or so, but it's to the point they can't just ignore it anymore. So that's going to be interesting to see. Texas high school valedictorian, two situations. One Christian girl, valedictorian, had to turn her speech in for approval. Principal wouldn't let her, made her take out a couple paragraphs where she expressed her faith in Jesus and how it's the foundation of her life and all that. She got a lawyer, and the superintendent of the school district, I guess, overrode the principal. So she's going to be allowed to, share her faith. Okay. But then you got another valedictorian who turned in a talk for, her little speech. Only thing is, when she got up there, she threw the speech away and started ripping and roaring on abortion rights and my body, my choice, all this kind of nonsense. So, by the way, speaking of abortion, Lubbock, Texas is a sanctuary city for the unborn. In other words, within the confines of Lubbock, Texas, there is no abortion. And they declared themselves, like these cities, especially out in California and other places, sanctuary cities for the illegals. You can't arrest them. You can't, they protect them, right? Well, in Lubbock, Texas, they are actually, they have passed a little thing in the city that they are a sanctuary city for the unborn. Now, Planned Parenthood didn't like that and took them to court, and the first judge just ruled and threw the case out. Now, I have no illusions Planned Parenthood's going to try to hit that one again, go up the ladder a little bit. But I thought that was kind of an interesting, way to take a stand against killing babies. Sanctuary city for the unborn. That's great. I heard there's a Ohio City too, Lebanon, I believe, which is down south by Cincinnati. I think they're doing the same thing. Benjamin Netanyahu, he's gone. There's going to be a new prime minister, a pro-Palestinian prime minister. And pray for Israel. Again, God puts men in power. God takes men out of power. This is not a pro-Israel prime minister, even though he's the prime minister of Israel. Because don't forget, you've got, in addition to the settlements, you've got Israeli, Jews living there, and Palestinian citizens living in Israel too. And this new prime minister is definitely pro-Palestinian. So we will see what happens in Israel. They may be coming to a situation like ours, because Israel, to be blunt with you, is a very secular country. It's the home of the Jewish people, but I got to be honest with you, religion, even though religion is a dominant issue in Israel because it's Israel and all the history and all that, the day-to-day population, and again, kind of like here, the last couple generations, they're Jewish people by birth, but they just don't practice. They don't practice, and it's become a very secular nation. Let me just hit this before we get out of here tonight. And I've been bringing this up every now and then. I don't know why God keeps having me do it, but I've been doing this show long enough. When he puts things on my heart to kind of repeat a little bit, there's usually a reason down the road. Iran's talking about an EMP attack. That's the electromagnetic pulse attack that knocks out computers for certain radius, whatever. Very primitive weapon, not that difficult. Looks like Russian hackers have been behind the hacking of the meat plant that, it's the largest meat processor in the world. And they also were the ones that shut down that gas pipeline a few weeks ago that caused the gas shortage and the lines on it. So Russian hackers are busy. Chinese hackers are busy. All of these have potential real problems for this country. And they don't get a lot of, airtime. But I will tell you right now, Iran, the mullahs in Iran, Putin in Russia, Xi in China, they do not fear Joe Biden. Russia and China have bought and paid for Joe Biden and his family. And they are just brazenly doing things and almost daring the United States, what are you going to do? So this is going to be worth watching in these coming weeks and months. Matter of fact, Biden's supposed to have some kind of a meeting with Putin. I can't remember where it is, so somewhere over in maybe Switzerland or something, some kind of a meeting of world leaders. I think it's June 16th, and they're supposed to have a little summit meeting between the two of them. It's obvious that they don't respect Biden. Hey, all I can tell you about Donald Trump is from history. 4 years, Iran did a few little things. We retaliated. They just kind of shut up. He had China on their heels for 4 years with all the tariffs and stuff to try to even out the trade imbalance. You didn't hear a peep from Russia for 4 years. So we will obviously see how that unfolds. All right. Before we get out here tonight, if you never made a decision for Christ, it's a decision you and you alone can make. And before we leave tonight, if there's anybody watching that tonight's the night that God is moving on your heart to surrender your life to Christ, I want you to pray with me right now. Dear Lord, I come to you tonight asking you to forgive me of all my sins. I confess my sins tonight, and Lord, ask your forgiveness. I believe in my heart, I confess with my mouth that Jesus is my Lord. Tonight, I give my life to you. Use me for your glory, now and forevermore. I am yours. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen. My friend, if you prayed that prayer, words were just a verbal guide for what you were doing in your heart by faith. That's what saves a person, faith in God's grace. Got a book I'll send you. Just drop me an email, bkellerliveprayer.com. I'll get it right out to you. If you need prayer for anything tonight, don't hesitate to email me, bkellerliveprayer.com. All right, listen, I don't know what's going to happen in the 23 hours until we're back together, Lord willing. But if it's anything like most of these days, it's probably going to be a lot. This is a program I would really encourage you to share on your social media with your friends. Just send them to Facebook, send them to Twitter, wherever. Send them to our YouTube, where we have all the archives. And this is a program you definitely want to share. People need to understand what's going on. So we'll see how it all plays out. And in the meantime, get a good night's sleep. Have a blessed day tomorrow. And we'll see you, Lord willing, 11 o'clock tomorrow night.
What problems are you dealing with in your life right now?
Do you feel like giving Times are hard.